Okay, so I just call you Larry, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Larry, tell us, when were you during the Wuhan pandemic?
I was right in the epicenter. I was in Wuhan Zhongnan Hospital.
What were you doing there, and exactly when were you there?
I was there from the end of January till the end of March.
So you worked there for 2 months?
Yes, I worked there for 2 months.
As a doctor or as a nurse, or what was your role?
That part I cannot say, but I help with medical practitioners.
So tell us, what did you see and what did you do there?
Well, at the first several days when I worked there, the end of January, I saw a lot of people seeking for medical help. They're stacking up in our hospital.
So before that, were you already in Wuhan, and when and how did you learn about the virus issue?
Some of my friends told me before the pandemic, it was like January 1st, I believe. And I was warned about possible pandemic spreading in that city.
From who? Who warned you?
From that part I cannot say, but he's a medical practitioner too.
Did you hear about Li Wenliang's arrest at that time?
No.
No. But you know, I remember the official media, CCTV, or their news, whatever channel, actually announced that 8 doctors were arrested or punished for spread rumor on the internet. But you didn't know about that?
No, I do not have an interest in working with China news.
So you didn't know Li Wenliang's case, or that your friend or whatever source warned you about a possible, what did he say to you exactly?
Possible pandemic, probably SARS, is spreading silently in Wuhan City.
Mm-hmm. And then what was your action then?
Well, I told them I will be careful, but we don't take. But I wasn't really sure about it, so I didn't take that seriously.
And how about other people's reactions?
They live a normal life and doing their normal jobs in hospital. Nothing changes, from my aspect.
Okay, so from what you gathered, did the authorities try to do something to prevent the virus, or prevent this, or you can say, infection from spreading in Wuhan?
Well, I can't remember the exact date, but before some day, in mid of January, they didn't do nothing. They done nothing. Done nothing to prevent it. They just constantly say it's not a problem, just a rumor, something like that.
So when did you start to feel that things were not that right?
It's around the same time my friends in hospital told me they start to wear personal protective gear to do their jobs, no matter which department they were in, which specialty they're in. They start to wear masks and personal protective equipment.
So when was that?
Sometime in mid of January.
Mid of January. So before that, you didn't take any precaution to prevent the problem?
I did take some precautions. I bought myself 2 boxes of masks and some alcohol, but didn't use that as frequently because I didn't think that was a serious issue.
So when did you realize this is very serious?
When they told me that.
When did you start to work in the hospital?
It's after January 23rd, which the city is under lockdown. I cannot leave. And they told me to help because I have some skills and professionals, which could aid them where they're short on hand.
And then then you started working there as a volunteer?
Volunteer. I didn't get any pay.
Okay, so tell us what impressed you most in the hospital.
The careless of the authorities, and they really want to mask all things up.
What did you mean by that?
We have some secretary of Communist Party of the hospital coming every single day, telling the head or the director of the department to write how many people died. And there were bodies piling up around parking lot used to park ambulances. And I was not allowed to get close to take pictures. And on WeChat, which was used as a local alert of pandemic, they're giving fake data.
Fake data. So how fake was it? So how many bodies did you see and what the numbers were actually given out?
I cannot count. But from my personal judgment, I'd say that for the first 3 to 5 days I worked there, the bodies had the pile of body exceeding 1,000.
1,000?
Yes, that I could be sure because I was there several years ago. I know how big that parking lot is.
So they just put over 1,000 bodies at that parking lot. Why? Why did they do that?
I do not know. People dying from different reasons. They die from they dying from lack of medications. For example, they're diabetic. They need medications to keep them alive. And if they fail to keep on the medication, they will have very high glucose in the blood, and they will die. They will die due to the ketoacidosis.
So are you telling us within 3 days?
3 to 5 days. I cannot be sure.
3 to 5 days, over 1,000 people died in that one hospital. So they all die after they went to your hospital for whatever reasons.
I don't know. Probably they've been collected around the area. Collected from, I'd say, from their apartment, from the community. Probably they haven't ever reached the hospital.
So did the hospital actually send people out to connect bodies from people's house?
Not from I heard of. I was just guessing.
So probably most of them actually died inside your hospital.
Yes.
So what were the numbers they actually gave out?
The numbers on the WeChat they gave out is for the first 3 to 5 days was something a little bit over 100.
So it's a 10 times difference at least.
They were saying they're confirmed death from COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, we don't know.
Okay. So do you have any idea of, for in regular times, what kind of the number should be for normal cases without this pandemic? Usually, how many people usually died in that hospital per day?
It depends. Most likely, people won't die in most of the departments except those who has cancers and other serious diseases like cardiac diseases and pulmonary diseases. People like that have much more tendency to die at a time. But I would say it's a very small number. Could be 50 to 100 per day. That's the most I could say.
Mm-hmm.
Because in China, people mostly refuse to die in hospital. If they cannot be cured, they will be informed by the attending physician, and they will just leave and die in their home.
So, I think for one hospital, that kind of number is very astonishing. And the pandemic has been going on in the world for a while. It seems we didn't see that kind of huge number of deaths. So why did you think that kind of number would appear in that hospital? You mean 中南, Wuhan 中南 Hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's your explanation for that kind of, I think it's still a very astonishing number?
I have a hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
People probably the virus itself has been spreading in the community, and Wuhan to be fair, Wuhan is a very densely populated city.
Mm-hmm.
And people and the virus is probably spreading at the end of December or even early January, some time being. And people were together celebrating New Year, and they're enjoying their holidays. So I would say that's probably the main cause of widespreading. And the authority trying to hide all the things, try not to alert people due to political reasons.
So how many hospitals do you know are there in Wuhan? And if one hospital had so many dead people, so what's your estimation of the situation in entire Wuhan? Do you have any rough ideas?
I didn't count, but there are many hospitals at the same level as Wuhan Zhongnan Hospital. They're big, have over 1,000 bed, have over 1,000 bedding wards, and they have a lot of medical practitioners. People tend to go there, and there are some medium-sized medical center, hospital, and small clinics. I've been estimating that with my friend in hospital during our break, we'd say it's 14 to 18 times than the official announced death number.
4,000 is an official number. Is if you times like 18, then how many? Nearly
Nearly 80,000.
80,000 people died in there. What did you think when you saw that many bodies?
And for a while I stopped thinking, to be honest. That was a very painful situation for you to see, especially when you work in medical field.
Were you scared or?
No, I'm not scared, but I was hurt.
Why?
And I don't want to see that massive casualties due to a stupid control of politics and policies.
Why? What do you mean by stupid control of?
Because they try to hide. They try to hide information. They try to hide information and inform. They didn't inform people how dangerous this might be. They only told people this is dangerous and it's transmissible between humans on January 20th. After that, only 3 days and the whole city is locked down. No one had any chance to leave, and before that, no one had any chance to prevent it.
So you think this is pretty much a man-made disaster?
At that time, I thought that it was a natural disaster. From that aspect, I already hate the government for hiding it, which resulting in so many people's death, and they're not ready to take the responsibilities.
How did the ordinary people cope with this kind of situation?
I don't know, but for some part I heard and I saw a little bit. They're starving their home, locking in their home, and who knows what they will do in that room. I don't know.
And how did you cope? I heard there were lack of protective, equipment, clothing.
Yeah, there were major shortage of personal protective equipments, and we tried to get some from a plaza in Hanyang district. On January 27 or 28th, I cannot remember time exactly, but somewhere near that, before February 1st to be sure. And we cannot get anything.
Why? Nobody was there distributing things.
The things were there distributing, but we are not allowed to touch it. They're distributing to someone they know, which we do not.
Okay, so it's still a problem of whether you have connections with the authorities, right?
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay, so I heard as the Anhao city was locked down, so there was no public traffic. So how did you go to work every day, and what did you see on your way, and how other people's situation were?
I live in one of my friend's home, and he takes me to hospital every day by his ride. You're right, the traffic was shutting down. Only the cars with labels that says they're medical staff or volunteer transporter, and they can for them they can go on the road. Only a little bit. And during the time on the road, most likely you will see police cars and the military trucks loaded with soldiers and guns.
Guns? Did you see the soldiers and guns?
Yes, but I do not know if they have bullets in guns.
So did the public know that? Are you saying that Wuhan is actually under military control to some kind of extent?
There was a local news at on probably February 1st or somewhere, I cannot say the date exactly, saying that several divisions from surrounding provinces are coming to help lockdown of Hubei province, which Wuhan city was in.
So what were the soldiers doing during the lockdown in Wuhan? Why were they there?
I don't know what they were doing. I just say I would like to say they're probably patrolling. The military trucks are patrolling, and they have soldiers inside, and I could see the guns on their hand.
So do you think that is necessary to send military there? Was there any possibility that the city would go out of control because of this pandemic?
I'm not a professional military strategist, so I couldn't answer the first question. But if you would like me to guess or do my best to try, I would say, well, if people are dying in their home, they cannot survive, they'll probably do anything. And military is probably there to prevent such things to happen.
But we didn't hear about any such kind of route, like attempt or anything that is out of order in Wuhan. We only heard that everything is controlled, and sometimes people. We saw a video of a woman, sitting in a balcony and trying to seeking help. So it seems it's quite under control. Only people couldn't seek any help. So I was a little bit surprised to hear that there were soldiers in the city. So what other?
I would like to say the soldier is probably just aiding that part. The major reason of people who does not try to do anything to survive, to get their rights, is because, well, they don't have the habit to do so. They just blindly follow the government. They believe the government.
So after you saw thousands of bodies, what happened to those bodies?
They were dragged away by some different vans for the first several days, probably a week. there were only 1 or 2 vehicles extracting them from the parking lot. And 2 weeks after, which is when the first wave of medical staff who came in as reinforcements at the time point, and they start to extract more, maybe 5 to 6 vehicles, and then bigger vehicles.
So we heard story from outside that all the I think crematory or funeral houses were overwhelmed during that period. So what did you know about these stories? Did you know about this kind of situation?
After the unlock of the city, I was on the taxi talking to a taxi driver, and that taxi driver happened to help driving a van to extract bodies in Hanyang district. Mm-hmm. And he told me there are a lot of people there. Sometimes they would just toss the bodies onto the parking lot of the funeral house and let them to pick up the rest. So, and another one is I have a pretty close friend. Her grandmother died because she cannot get dialysis during the pandemic. And compensatory, she went to like very high intense dialysis after the unlock, which was like 3 times a week, and get some gastric ulcers, losing tons of blood, end up in anemia, and died from that. And her grandma had a hip transplant made from titanium, which is kind of metal. And when she was asked to take her ashes, there's no metal in the ash. And people told her the titanium was melt, which is not possible. Mm. That's all I know about funeral house and some incineration things.
So did you ever talk to any patients who actually had the virus issue or infected with what's the COVID-19?
I work in a department. To be honest, we do not have a single patient who has confirmed had COVID. But I believe at least I had in contact with 20 of them, mm-hmm. who was actually positive on COVID, because the government refused to test them. If you refuse to test them and they die, you can just it's actually inconvenient to say they're not dying from COVID, they're just dying from other reasons. We do not have proof that they're diagnosed positive.
So right now, I think China is often. There were many times when there was only several new cases found in a city, and they test the whole city. Everyone in the city got tested. So why those patients or those people who could be infected were not tested then?
At that time, they just want to avoid any documented evidences that they have major outbreak. And they're doing it now. I have 2 hypotheses. The reason why they do it now, the first one is to say we do that every single day when we see a pandemic, so it was not that severe in Wuhan. The lockdown and that lockdown in Wuhan was nothing severe. That's just our routine when we see pandemic. They want to desensitizing the society. The other hypothesis I would have is they're not really confident about their vaccine. That's what I could say.
Okay, so in the early days, like in January last year, they actually refused to test people. So you have no idea.
Yes, and there were policy about compensation to medical staff who has been exposed to COVID patient and get infected. Mm-hmm. For that part, they save money by refuse to giving tests to medical staffs.
So how serious this problem is for no testing? So how many do you have any idea how many more people could have got infected, and also for the medical professionals, what kind of damage was done to them because of this lacking of testing?
I would say it was huge, but I don't know. I don't know really.
So how did your colleagues cope with this kind of situation?
Well, at that time, most of us live like a zombie. We sleep and drive to hospital, work, and probably sleep, take a nap, eat something, and then go back home, and hope we do not get any symptoms. That's all.
So, but when you see so many people are dying, how did you feel, or did you ever think, what can we do better, or have you ever think about what kind of help we could get from the government to improve this situation?
To be honest, I don't trust the government ever. And after that incident, during the late January, I already give up on them. I do not have any expectation from Chinese government.
So when did they actually tell people this is very serious, you need to be careful, or when did they start to be honest with the people?
They never.
They never.
The only thing they said it was serious and transmissible between humans was on January 20th by the very famous pulmonologist, Zhong Nanshan. I bet you heard her. I heard him.
Yes, he's very, very famous. I think everybody who follow the news heard about him. So when did you think was this situation worst during the lockdown?
To be honest, it was never better.
Never better?
Mm-hmm.
But now should be okay.
You know, from their aspect, that's all they could want. There's no routes, there's no discontent, everything in their control. So everything is good for them, never better. But in our aspect, well, can be worse, but what are you expecting? What can we do? We're just prisoners on that land.
Yes, but I mean, because people start dying slowly, and then I mean the worst situation is when there were most people who were dying every day. Do you have any idea when that kind of situation peak, and then slowly maybe everybody got maybe immunity to this virus, and then things started to get over or get better? Do you have any idea whether there was such kind of peak?
I understand your question, but for that conclusion, you need data.
Mm-hmm.
You need data and statistics, which you cannot get any real thing from Chinese government.
But from your own personal experience of working in that hospital, you must have felt when you have the most patient coming in, and then suddenly someday the numbers
drop.
Yes. Do you have any idea?
It's from the beginning of February till the mid of March.
Why did that happen? So it is because for those who infected already died, and for those who haven't infected, they already got immunity, or why the situation improved?
If we look at the data of global pandemic, we will realize that most strain of COVID-19 is not that fatal. On the fatality is only the fatality rate is like only 2% around. So most of the people probably get infected, and they get immunity against it, which the Westerners had said is herd immunity. That might be a major reason, and another reason it might be they have set up some temporary hospital outside urban area in Wuhan.
Yes, I heard there's a Huoshan and whatever.
Yes, that was that called, and they took the dormitory of different colleges, high schools, and put patients in there.
Okay, so to reduce the load or the situation of the hospitals.
Yes.
What else do you think we should know that the outside world still doesn't know? What else you think you need to tell the world about what happened in Wuhan?
Well, there's an incident I witnessed on probably February 5th. Yes, 5th could be. And on that night, my friend drove me home, and we went past a tunnel crossing a very busy business district, and there were people shouting in there. Those people who was not living in Wuhan, but cannot return to their home during the Spring Festival, and they were sheltering there. And I saw people, probably someone from official. Otherwise, I don't know how they got out of the street without any authorization. And they tried to flush them out with a horse, with a fire horse. That was a very cold day, and in the night, the people who tried to disperse them get them all wet.
So why do you think they did that to those people?
I don't know. My aspect, which I had lived so many years in China, they just don't tolerate people who had a bad situation in their lives. And the government encourages that.
So what do you think the world should learn from this pandemic or from what's happening in Wuhan, from your perspective?
It is hard to conclude, but if I really would like to say something, it will be: do not trust the government that lies to you so many times. Lies to everyone, not only their people, lies to the international society, anything. No, don't trust them. That's all I want to say. If you just by default you think everything they say is fake, you just realize there's something. You just realize there's something. It's not that mysterious in your life anyway. You know why the world become like this. You know why we get worse and worse, because they're lying to you and you just buying in it.
So do you still have connections with medical professionals in China, and how the situation is now as far as you know?
No, because I took a lot of sensitive data from them, and the people just delete me, like block me on every social media they could, because they want to keep themselves safe, which I can understand.
So because they know you are outside China now, so they think it's no longer safe to talk to you, right?
Yes. They will be monitored, followed, anything you could consider.
So you don't talk to them anymore?
No.
Okay, so recently I think the US government issued a report about the investigation into the origin of the virus, and the conclusion is because we couldn't get data or help from the Chinese government, so we really don't know. So what's your thought about this?
Well, previously I said you do not trust them, and they're the suspect you're trying to the report of the United States government gave out is basically saying because the suspect refused to cooperate with us, so we cannot find him guilty, which is ridiculous. On top of that, I said they just lying. They never did anything real. Except the atrocities was real, but they never accepted. They never admitted.
So anything else you want to tell us?
And about the whistleblower, Dr. Lee. You talked. You mentioned before.
Yes. What do you know about him?
I didn't know him. I didn't know him by the time I was informed about the disease, though he was on CCTV.
When did you hear him for the first time?
I heard him from 1st of February. He was actually an eye doctor, which had no reason to be exposed to COVID-19 so early. By the time, which is February 1st, he is already infected for several days, which is very strange. I mentioned with you, the RNA test was not given to medical staffs and patients. Most likely not. But they given to him pretty quick, and he's confirmed positive. And he was locked in a private room, private quarantine room. Did not receive any treatment. We cannot see any. I do have the pictures, and already sent them to authorities in the United States. The picture of his medical history and medication used, procedure did, consultation records, everything. And he did not receive any treatment until the day he dies. The day he dies, in the morning, they gave him a prednisolone, which is used to reduce the resistance in his trachea, trying to make him breathe easier. And there was a consultation between intensivist and a pulmonologist. But nothing after that. Nothing they did after that. No prescriptions, no procedures, no therapy. And to that day, same night, it's around 8 p.m. on that day. His partial oxygen pressure dropped to 40%. They didn't do anything. Just did ultrasound of heart, and gave him prednisone again, atropine, and epinephrine. Didn't do anything else. And on Weibo, the social media in China, someone said he was dead at probably 9:20 p.m. that day. And they tried to resurrect him. Basically, he already under resurrected for over 30 minutes at that time. But the Communist Party, the Secretary of the Communist Party in the hospital, want them to keep going, which is meaningless. Because everyone who ever went to medical school, they know that 30 minutes after trying to resurrect someone and you fail, that's fail. He or she is dead. But they kept doing that for several hours till next day, like 2 or 3 a.m., announce him dead. And there is a very interesting record. He was given an incubation and mechanical ventilation at 10:30 p.m. around that time.
So you mean after
his death?
So why did they do that?
I don't know. Probably just for show. And people, I was not there, but one of my very close friends was there, and she said they just took pictures and trying to hold him breathing as long as they could to wait for the superior's instructions. That's what they do to a person who's dying. They didn't even try. They did not pay any efforts to keep him alive before his situation is critical. And everything they did is against the common directions from WHO to COVID-19 infectors on that day. So I would like to say Dr. Lee is probably murdered by them.
So you mentioned that he was an eye doctor. He had no chance to be exposed.
He does have the chance because you don't know which patient coming to you because they have eye problem. They also they're also infected with COVID-19. You don't know. That could be possible. It is just too coincidental that he let out a rumor. He stopped his job for a while and was sent to his hospital to keep working on eye department. And then he get infected. More importantly, he get tested. And most of people the government most likely do not give people a chance to test because they want to reduce the cases, reduce the positive cases officially as much as possible. So, I can't believe they're coincidences.
So are you suggesting that he could be he wasn't?
He was infected, but I really doubt why he was infected.
Oh, okay. So you think
The source of infection.
Okay, I read something about himself saying because he didn't wear protection in his eye area or just wear a mask.
Around mid of January, everyone in the hospital starting to wear the equipment.
But he didn't.
He should have. Otherwise, he will not be allowed to get into the department.
So you think his infection was a little bit suspicious?
Yes, it's really suspicious. The actions they took on him, they didn't treat him. They just saying he's under quarantine, but actually not. He's under arrest, more likely.
Oh, so you doubt they purposely infected him and then let him die?
Yes, that's probably it looks like kind of conspiracy, but I believe this is completely possible.
Okay, from his medical record on that day?
On the whole time before his death.
Okay. So anything else you want to tell us? Oh, I missed. I didn't ask you, which I should.
I think that's probably all I could offer that will interest most of the people of how they did in the pandemic.
Okay, so yeah, that's quite shocking. So you think in the future what the world can do best is do not trust the CCP anymore?
No, never.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it for now.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.